keep in mind, this is a term sheet is a basic outline of the terms of the company, and it sets up the due diligence process, right? So it's accurate, but it is a summary of all sorts of terms that are associated with the investment, and the intent is to lay out at a high level what those terms are, okay? These are very standard. You can find them all over the place. There'll be financial terms, how much money you're raising, what you're pricing it at. As we talked about, there'll be preferred terms in there if that's what you're selling, otherwise it'll be common. You'll talk about what voting rights an investor gets, if they get a board seat, all those kind of things. So basically everything we're talking about today gets distilled in a term sheet, given to an investor and negotiated at some point. Pre-money valuation, this is the money that the company is worth before the offering. Post-money is just the pre-money valuation plus the amount of cash that you raised, okay? I've seen all sorts of things with valuation. That's the rule. I think post-money valuation is worthless, but some term sheets, people put it in. Pre-money is really what you have. But that's all those terms mean. Liquidation preference, we talked about, I think in the other sections. Like I said, this is not as bad of a term for you as you think. It just protects the cash from the investor. Option pool. I get this all the time, is how big should an option pool have? Investors want you to set the option pool ahead of time because you as the founders take all the dilution then if the option pool is set ahead of time, okay? And so keep in mind that a lot of times investors will say, I want the option pool to be 15% after my investment, which is a little more complicated from a math standpoint. Let somebody else help you calculate that. But the reason they want you to do that is they want you to take the dilution, not them. Okay? So factor that in when you decide how big of a pool you want to have. You know, don't go crazy with the size of pool that you have because that pushes dilution to you. So don't go in with a 50% pool, because keep in mind that all dilutes to you. But also don't go in with something so small where you have to constantly go back to your shareholders to increase it if you need to give more, right? 10 to 15% is pretty standard as far as what people use. Keep in mind, frequently people will put in things about founder salaries and keeping control of kind of the budget items and that kind of thing. Frequently get written into a term sheet. You know, nobody wants you to get a bunch of investor money and then spend it in a way that doesn't further the company. Don't take offense to this. It's just your investor's probably been burned before by somebody, you know, who bought a Porsche after they gave them some money, right? And so this has nothing to do with you or your, you know, patronage or whatever. It's just they've been burned before, so they're going to put it in. All right. New money, new bosses, new governance, right? So before you take money from, you know, kind of sophisticated investors, there's probably not a lot of oversight that you have. Just appreciate the fact that when you get professional investors in, they're going to come in and they're going to want to add some structure to your company. They're going to want to put some best practices in place. This is good for your company. These are probably things that you should have been doing before, but most companies that start off probably aren't doing them. But keep in mind that the investor is going to want to dictate some level of formality there to help keep the company on track. Like I said, generally one board seat of a 5-member board that's negotiable. Keep in mind that the investor, they protect themselves by the rights they give themselves in the term sheet, not by the person they put on the board. The person on the board is to keep a pulse on the company and make sure that they make good decisions. They protect themselves by putting terms in the term sheet and in your articles of incorporation that keep you on the rails, right? Can't sell a company without our consent. Can't, you know, sell shares that have better rights than ours without our consent. Those kind of things. That's how they protect themselves. The rest of it is to help you out. Use them as a resource. Okay. Shareholders, preferred shareholders, so your investors, they want to have votes on fundamental transactions. Do we shut the company down? Do we sell it? Do we raise more money? Do we merge with somebody? Those kind of things. These are pretty standard. Most of the time we know exactly what they have. Keep in mind there's certain things that that are blocking rights, meaning you can't do this without our approval. So that would be, can't sell the company, those kind of things. The others are affirmative rights, the preemptive rights that we talked about, sort of participation in future rounds or affirmative rights, and those kind of things. Sorry, I'm losing the things. They want to have like budget rights, tax, visibility of tax returns, financial statements, those kind of things. Make sure that that when you're setting those things out, I would say I never have this problem with more sophisticated investors, but some investors that have read more books and aren't as involved in how this works, they can really use these rights to kind of sidetrack you and spend too much time on things like the equity compensation piece I just talked about. And so make sure that you keep it a nice balance between day-to-day running the operations and keeping your investor informed, okay? If an investor starts pushing over where they're spending a lot of your day responding to things that they want or questions that they have, that's the time that you need to put some rules around how frequently you're going to correspond, how you're going to correspond, that kind of thing. So when you structure these rights, make sure that it's not unlimited, because sometimes that becomes kind of a time killer for you when you're trying to run your business. Did I go backwards? I think I must have duplicated this. Right of first refusal is typically you can't sell equity without the consent of the other owners. That just makes sure that you don't get somebody in the cap table that nobody likes or wants, somebody who's maybe litigious, that kind of thing. Frequently this covers all the investors, but sometimes it's just for the founders, meaning they want you to, if you're going to sell out, you got to offer to them first. If you're going to do that, keep in mind that having a minimum ownership requirement that triggers this is really helpful. If you have a 1% to 2% person who sells out, calculating that right of first refusal on that small a piece can be a huge pain. So make sure that you think about that. I'm not actually going to, I'm going to skip through some of these. Is that all right, Mike? Okay, thanks. Mike's giving me a look like it's, I wish you'd gotten to that a minute ago. And I'm like, we can talk about negotiation here. I want to talk about the close. Okay.